Hello and welcome to the Organic Takeover or the Wormhole, the Organic Wormhole. I can't believe I just messed that up. Episode 13. How you guys doing this week?
We're
Can
doing
you
good.
guys believe we're on 13 already?
Is it
Wow.
really? It's the
Yeah.
magic number. Wow.
Huh?
Doing good, man. It's beautiful, beautiful Friday night.
Amazing Friday night.
Yeah,
We got
doing
nice
well.
weather here. It's a little chilly, but plant not freezing. So we got some plants going on in the garden. Got some shit happening in the veggie garden for the outdoor. Get my clones kind of acclimated. How you guys doing?
Pretty good. I feel good about at least puffing a little bit on this episode. Last week with fucking last one with Mr. Lowenfels there, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna puff this one. Usually I try to sneak in a couple puffs during our conversation, but not last week. But hopefully this week, you guys. I don't. That's another thing. I very rarely see you guys smoke during these episodes. It's just, yeah. All right. All right. Okay. All right.
Oh yeah,
Now,
I'm smoking. I've usually got my bong sitting here because I don't really do a lot of dabs during the show.
nice.
So
All right.
I'll smoke to that, and I'll pack fresh. I
As
guess
long
I'm
as I'm not going to be the only one, I feel a lot less worse about smoking now.
no,
Cheers.
I need to be encouraged to smoke from time to time because I do so many edibles. I forget to smoke most of the time, and then I remember when I do it again. I'm like, oh yeah, that's another way to. That's a nice buzz too.
So yeah, we did have another guest cancel on us this week. I tried to it was such short notice that I tried to reach out to a few other people to try to, fill that slot right quick, but yeah, it was too close, too close. I ended up with some future guests. But I didn't have none that could fill the slot today, so we're just gonna have to make it work, boys, but I think we
Oh,
can.
good man. It's not like we don't have anything to talk about.
well, I think we've covered it many times without having guests and did pretty well. So
Oh,
we
yeah.
can find out.
We'll fill in.
Yeah. So, what all did you have you done anything special this year, Smiley, as far as getting the garden ready?
Um, no, actually, it's been pretty established now. So really, the main thing was pulling out all the wheat that was I think it was wheat, but all the wheat that was growing from the straw that I had laid down last year. So I had really beautiful looking wheat going. They were probably 3.5, 4 foot tall, just beautiful stems on them.
It sounds like my rye coming up in my living bed.
It might have been rye, and I might be wrong on that, but it's whatever the straw was that I got. So there's always seed in it, but I put all that in the compost. So I pulled up and I got half my compost full of fresh greens that way. So it worked out. So then I got the tomatoes planted and put straw down around those. Got a few peppers planted, but I got to cut a tree down now. So, and where the tree's gonna land is kind of like where I was gonna plant some of the other peppers. So I was kind of waiting, but
Why you got to cut down a tree?
um, because it's a pain in the ass.
Hey, that's no excuse.
It's a real good excuse, actually.
Well,
It's a real good excuse.
He's right to
Uh,
giving you a hard time, isn't he?
yeah, it's just it's a mulberry and it drops all kinds of crazy shit.
love mulberries.
I know.
I wish I could grow them. I wish
Yeah.
we.
And I was
That's
watching we have these cardinals that are like, they must be nesting around, but we see them all the time. There's a male and a female, and they seem to really like that tree too. So I was like, man, we cut that down, we're gonna lose our cardinals probably. But
yeah, you really. They
but
like feeding on the.
it shades half the garden too, and it I don't know. It's just, and it's right along my fence, and it's over into my neighbor's yard, and like,
I get it. I get it.
it's on the cut list, man.
Gotta go. Gotta go.
But,
Productivity reigns here. Sorry.
yeah, and I got a few good broccolis going. I got a few carrots started. And, yeah,
What
so
about any mushrooms popping up?
I do get occasional mushrooms popping up. And we're expecting some rain, so it might
What
depending
about
on what the temperature is. But
any morel hunting?
I see an occasional morale around, but not a ton.
When I lived in Iowa, I used to go all the time. I loved morel hunting.
Dude, you can
They
buy
were so good.
spores for that shit, like the morels. You can
I
get
know.
spores for those, and like you basically, when I was watching, I never did it, but you basically buy the grain that's already mycelium, and then he was basically doing like a compost extract with it and like mixing it with water. And then he just went and poured all that water all around his yard. And fuck man, like the next year or so, he had, they were popping up all over his fucking yard. So yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
Most of this biology stuff.
I'm not a big fan of eating mushrooms, but if I was, that would be something.
Well, we always knew to look around the elm trees for morels. That's kind of what we knew when we would hunt them.
What are
So
they?
something about the elm tree, the wood, and morels, like that's the type of food that they really like. So
Yeah, the different mushroom types pair with certain tree types. So
Yep.
you know, like if you're in a certain forest region, you're going to probably find this type of mushroom in that region.
well, what is it?
The chaga with the birch, right? Like they pair only with birch. So you're gonna get chaga, it's gonna be on birch.
Yeah, I got a few that grow out of my one tree that's half dead too in the backyard. So yeah, I got some fungi popping up around the yard, and I actually got some from some of the worm casting that I got from Wormy's GR. I've been noticing all these. There's a yellow one and there's a white one. There's actually a few different kind that'll pop out of there. So
Chaga is super beneficial. I take chaga to kind of keep my sugar intact, keep from the up and down.
Excellent for immunity as well. Super immune booster. Immunomodulator doesn't overregulate or underregulate, just tunes in.
So just like cannabis, do you think that we're just tipping, this is just the tip of the spear of what we're going to find out that different type of mushrooms have? I mean, what is there, like 3,500 different species? I think I'm even, it's on the low side of things. And there's no way we could know the medical benefits of every one. I think that we just went to the, some are poisoned, leave them alone. You know what I mean? I think that's as far as a lot of that research ever went. You know what I mean? Just edible or not edible, period.
Well, even the Amanita, they're finding that, they think that was poisonous mushroom. Now they're finding that's probably why we have Christmas, and like it's associated with a ton of like actual human evolution stuff. And then people are experimenting with it. So it's like, like again, misconceptions, right? Like we just misunderstand something, and our whole perception is twisted because of it.
So, what are some of the beneficial stuff that we can find in our gardens, or maybe add? I mean, is there some of the fungi, some of the mushrooms that are beneficial to our cannabis garden, or I've always kind of been on the fence about that. I've seen yellow mushrooms pop up in my pots, and at that point, I was like, I don't know if this is good or bad. Back in the day, you know what I mean? I always took the yellow mushrooms that popped up in my pots as kind of a bad sign, to be honest with you. Now, I don't think I'd look at it the same.
Think of mushrooms as composters. They are breaking down any material, woody, leafy type material that is in most of your soil. So when they're popping up in your soil, it's not a bad thing. To eat them or not, you'd have to identify there, because there's a lot of edible mushrooms. There are still new species of mushrooms being found, as well as different psychedelic mushrooms that are being found out in nature. So it's really interesting. Just the mushroom and the whole kingdom itself is interesting. And so that's kind of why, we're trying to talk about it a little bit, bringing it up, especially with a lot of states now kind of looking for psychedelic mushrooms to become illegal, decriminalized, like Colorado, Oregon. these other states. And more people are looking to microdose for therapeutic benefits. And so that's the one thing that I'm trying to understand, is like, I thought certain microdoses are, like the ranges, anywhere from like a 0.001 to 0.25, like microdose size. Anything more than 0.25 is considered a macrodose, up to half gram. And then there's a whole chart, and I was just trying to look for it. And when we get going, I'll find it and pull it up and kind of share it. But it breaks down kind of like what a dosage actually is for people, because a lot of people that when they've tried mushrooms, they don't know how much to really consume or try. One of my friends, he always thought, oh, hey, we're going to get, a quarter mushrooms and all three of us are going to just eat it. And that's how we deal with whatever we're dealing with. He never actually knew like what taking a half gram really felt like until we took one going to a concert one night. And he's like, bro, I feel it, but I don't really like, I'm not getting all the visuals and stuff I normally get. So there's a difference in dosing.
And there's different types of psychedelic mushrooms. And then in addition to dosing, there's also the stacking thing, right? Like I think Stamets has like 5 things he stacks now for neural regrowth and like fast development of neurology. And the scientific studies that are going on that are incredible right now. I'm sure you're probably aware of some of those too.
Oh yeah, I'm aware of them. Niacin, lion's mane, any psilocybin. He didn't specifically say the dosage or most of that on some of this stuff. Eagle, I'm going to share this with you on Instagram. So if you can pull it up for us.
You should be able. You can share it right now, Medi.
I've got it on my phone. That's how I found it.
All right. Let me see what I can do here.
That's why I was trying to just share it to somebody. Maybe I can share it in Wormhole with.
You want me to pull it up? If you share it in Wormhole, I can pull it up.
Yeah, let me do that too, just to be safe.
There you go.
Okay.
I can share it as well.
No, if you got it, I'll let you take it.
Okay, so it's in there. So if you want to share it. But that's pretty much what the dosing chart is and how it's describing like what recommended doses are. Insane, profound breakthrough. Now, some of my friends, Tanasi, Sacred 3 Gardens, Lady Hyphy, these are some people on Instagram. If you don't follow them, I would look into it. They've done these breakthrough dosages where it's 11 to 15 grams at their body weight, and they're hitting breakthrough levels. And it's interesting from a microdose to a breakthrough dosage that Paul Stamets talks that he can treat somebody with like PTSD type symptoms with 2 microdoses versus taking 3 to 5 macrodoses to treat the symptoms. So I'm trying to understand like the smaller the better versus larger doses, but we're not really getting into that hallucinogenic trip. The part that I want to talk about was the synesthesia part of it, the sensory parts that sometimes it will combine different sensory at the same time. So what this describes is like one of my friends was like, bro, when I ate those Jedi mind fucks, I was seeing sound and music, like colors coming out as sound. And sometimes people will get different tastes that can relate to color. Carlton, what were you talking about some of that earlier on the sensory part of it?
No, yeah, how you were
Jedi mind fucks.
how did I say it? I had a good way of saying it, but I don't remember now. But it was well, hold on. Is that a me?
No, that was Eagle trying to
Okay.
get back to getting out of sharing this.
Did I screw something up? I touched something.
No, that was completely.
Like basically it lets senses translate to each other. But I said it better than that, but I don't remember what I said now.
Basically how they work together.
Yeah, like it lets your senses translate to each other and like synthesize different senses between each other. Like so,
Right.
like you can hear something you would normally see, or see something you would normally hear, or feel something you would normally see. Like I guess it's sort of like what I've heard described as like MDMA experience in some fashion, but it's very
Well,
bad.
what's weird about synthesia and mushrooms, most of the synthesia people have autism.
Yes, yes, yes. That's a condition also that people are born with, aside from any psychedelic influence, right?
Right. So it's weird to me how we can take some psilocybin in a sense and get some of these
Recode our
same,
mind.
right, recode our mind to get some of the
Yeah.
sensation as like we're autistic.
Dude,
So
I have to say, before you go further with the mushroom thing, I did try some mushrooms in the past year or so, a couple different times. And I did some larger doses, not huge, larger, psychedelic trip, but not crazy. And some smaller doses, some microdoses, and some ongoing stuff. And I have to say, like, after listening to what Paul Stamets said and my personal experience, the evolution that happened for me, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, on every level, just evolved like on an explosive scale, you're going to see that reflected in my farming and all that kind of stuff in the coming year or two. But it's a transformative experience. And if you're up to it and you're seeking a transformative experience, I think it's a great tool to use, but use it carefully and sparingly like you would any tool.
So microdosing to me, because I took half a gram before the show. If I take anything half gram or under, because I do it daily, sometimes twice a day, to me, it's like an energy boost. It's like my caffeine. I don't really need coffee because taking a microdose kind of wakes me up in a sense. What it is to me is like a happy pill where I feel good, I feel happy, I don't feel depressed, I don't feel upset about things. Um, I'm just kind of like not really like the weed, fuck it, but yeah, kind of like fuck it. Like, okay, I'm not overthinking stuff. Sometimes because like I deal with PTSD and my mind can overthink a lot of shit at times. And so this to me, as a microdose, I can't relate it to like a pharmaceutical drug in a sense, but if I would, it'd be maybe a Valium, where it just calms you down if you're real anxious or anything over half gram, especially like understanding the potency of some of these mushrooms is also what you need to understand about microdosing. So golden teachers, for a good example, test about 0.7% psilocybin. As Melmax on the other end, which is a penis envy mutation, it tests at 2.19%, which is almost like double the amount of psilocybin in that mushroom versus the golden teachers. So if you're eating a gram of that, that's like a gram or almost 2 to 3 grams of the golden teachers. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, and that's just talking about the psilocybin. There's all these other compounds like
Yes.
glucans, and all these other things that interact with it. We're talking about just one compound of thousands, probably, in these mushrooms. And each of those interacts with our system and interacts with each other, right? It's a whole system.
Well, and so taking microdoses of a Melmac, I don't think I could do a half gram of that because it's almost too intense. As golden teachers, oh yeah, that's no problem. Like what I've been microdosing lately are Caspers, which to me is like a 0.8, maybe a point or 1 point. That's about it. It's not real intense, but I've tried microdosing penis envy mutation called Enigma. Took a half gram. Sitting there having breakfast with one of my part suppliers for the electrical company that I work for. And that microdose hit me hard. I'm like, oh fuck, Mike, I'm really feeling this microdose right now. He's like, what? You took one? I'm like, yeah, I think it was a little too much today. And so sometimes, and that's what I mean by making sure you understand when you're trying to microdose, you understand the potency of the mushroom you're taking.
Yep. And that setting thing's important as always too. Like, don't set yourself up for a fail. Don't start your first dose and then go out somewhere where there's a bunch of people and you don't know how you're gonna react or how you're gonna feel. Like,
No,
figure it out first,
well, and that's where maybe you do it with somebody that's done some microdosing to walk you through it so you understand. Maybe
Yeah.
like that's what my friend Tanasi wants me to do. He wants me to do a breakthrough dosage up there, but he wants me to literally come to him where his house. So I'll stay the night, do whatever, but so I can have a full experience and not have any worries or stresses where I know I'm in a safe environment and with somebody that I trust walking me through some of this to do a heroic breakthrough dose. I'm scared as fuck though. It's a little nerve wracking because I know when I've taken 3 grams or more, there's times, especially on the penis envy strains, I'm like, oh my God, am I going to die? Oh, did I take too much? Oh, fuck. Like I start to kind of panic a little bit. And that's the part you don't want to get into the bad trip. You will need somebody to walk you through, calm you down, so you're not getting into what we call a bad trip.
Yep. Yeah, it's very different from cannabis. I mean, cannabis you can go off the deep end too, right? But like I've learned to manage that over all the time that I've had experience wise, and like the mushroom's a whole different thing, man. That's a whole different thing to talk yourself down from. I get muted, evil.
Am I muted now?
There you go.
Damn it. Thanks.
I hope my audio is any better.
Didn't even look like I was muted. So is psilocybin an accurate measurement then as far as, or is that as misleading as the THC percentages that we,
No, these are not elevated or inflated by 5 to 15% like Colorado actually allows for marijuana. So if I take a marijuana strain in, it tests at 12%. They can say up to additional 15%. Now it's 27% when it's really 12. So no, this is actual testing on the amount of psilocybin in the mushroom.
Because like as we were talking about, Carlton brought up there's so many other compounds that do, add to this effect and stuff. I mean, how much of that's being taken in for that? I mean, when I think of microdose and I'm taking a new mushroom, it isn't usually coming with some type of testing. It's coming from a guy with a big bag of mushrooms going, these are awesome. You know what I mean? So it's like what you're saying, buy like a half gram, and if I can feel it, I back off from my microdose, and if I can't feel it in that little bit, I go a little bit heavier. That's how I feel out that that in particular strain.
Well, here's what's more interesting. The freeze dried versus naturally dried. Because wait 1 second.
Just build it up like that, and then we'll just wait 1 second.
Let me guess, it's about preservation, about that instant preservation, like freeze dry.
Okay.
Awesome.
So
all right, before we get into like preservation,
no, this still has to do with.
Is there a difference in effect between fresh, wet mushrooms?
Just answer the question, Senator.
So freeze dried. Freeze dried actually it doesn't want to. Okay,
That's pretty much.
Yes, freeze dried mushrooms contain more of the natural part of it. It has a little bit higher percentage that it's obtaining of the natural psilocybin versus a natural air dried hydro dehydrator that some people will do to help dry them out sooner. So it's weird because my understanding is eating the freeze dried, it hits you faster than actually the dried mushrooms because it's a little higher percentage of the psilocin, not psilocin,
Yeah.
the other one of the other compounds, but it doesn't last as long
Yeah.
as a natural dried mushroom where say I ate some freeze dried.
So
It may last me a few hours versus 5 to 6 hours on naturally dried mushrooms.
I noticed that between fresh and dried, naturally dried with natalensis, the fresh stuff much shorter lasting, much faster acting. I like the effect a little more fresh actually, but very nice by the way. But the dried stuff, same thing. It was longer lasting, slower acting, like you're talking about there. It's interesting that you actually mentioned that.
Well, and that's kind of what I thought was pretty nice about it. How it acts differently in your body. Like, okay, if I'm going to eat such and such in this amount, I'm going to eat some freeze dried because I've got some shit to do later and I need to kind of be a little bit more sobered up and not so under the influence and feeling the like visual effects.
Able to function basically, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I had my first like big experience was like accidental. See, I was actually taking a bunch of wet philosopher stones that a friend was giving him, and then all of a sudden I get a nice bag of some dry ones, and I'm being the stoner. I didn't even think of it. I just like, oh, okay, just weighing up the normal wet dose. And I'm like, oh, it did kind of, it was a little bit bigger pile, but I didn't just kick them back. And what resulted out of that was like, woo, like that experience was life changing with the mushroom there. It was super rough. I ended up having to call somebody, what I seen, I didn't, well, I say seen, but it wasn't seen. It was more of, I had feeling, you know what I mean? I went through a wide variety of emotion and I received what I call or believe was more of a download that was, it unpacked later on. It wasn't like I seen it or made sense of it. It was something that kind of unpacked itself.
Yeah, dude, it's like an installer pack with an upgrade. It's crazy.
So I look at it as a spiritual deal. One thing. Two, it makes you face your fucking self. If you've got any trauma you've been hiding and not wanting to face or deal with from your past growing up, some type of car trash experience or seeing a dead body, something, it's going to make you deal with it and relive it and get through it. That's the nice thing about it. Like my ex, we ate some B plus, I think it was, and she was crying, very emotional on it. It really made her face herself where she's eaten other mushrooms before, but they didn't really do that to her.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing on the therapeutic side people are looking for is that breakthrough, the crying, the release of the hurt, the pain that you've been dealing with. That's why you're trying to do some of this dosing and use it for the therapeutics.
Oh yeah, dude, and the trauma you can dump when you're able to do that, man, the stuff you're able to access that you could never unlock before.
It's like muscle memory. You know what I mean? That emotional stuff's locked up and put in there, and you don't realize it's actually still got you tight. But man, when you can release it, you can definitely feel that relax. You didn't even realize you were carrying it around, but now you've gotten rid of it. It's so relaxing, so zen like. So I've actually heard great things. I've used mushrooms for many reasons. Partying. I've done the microdosing. But one thing that has interested me lately, as far as the mushrooms and stuff like that, somebody brought to my attention a little bit of mushroom running. And I I'm yet to try it, but man, does it sound interesting to take up a nice dose and then go hit a little trail running. You know what I mean? I think would be fabulous.
That was a nice little link I sent you about running on some mushrooms. And I'm telling you, like, just a microdose and run on that eagle. I think that you would be like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this? Like, I don't need to do this or this pre-workout drink and get me all amped up. I just took a fucking half gram and holy shit, here I am. I'm past where I normally stop because I feel so good right now.
Yeah, man, it's
Eagle's gonna turn in his best time in his mushroom run, and at the end he'll be like, it was all those dinosaurs that were chasing me.
I could, yeah, maybe, but I think I may be too tuned in, man. Last time I tried like mushrooms and wildlife, I came home with literally a backpack and shoes full of rocks, to where I was literally tuned into, and I'm surprised I do have it on me. I found this rock that day.
Oh shit.
Right here.
Oh shit. Seriously? You
Here?
keep it in your back pocket?
This is my fucking lucky rock. I carry it with me fucking everywhere. I found it on a mushroom. Me and Angel were out in the woods in Huron National Forest. There's a glacier that had sat there and melted and is now part of Higgins Lake, whatever. But so many, it was such a great place that had, nothing's ever been there. Natural forest. There's every reason to look for gemstones. And we found agates, and this fucking thing, man, stuck up. It was like sitting out of the ground like that, and it just looked like a fucking snake eye. And it fucking stuck out, and I cleaned her up, and she has brought me nothing but luck since.
Very
But
nice.
man, seriously, man, we went through and like, oh my God, you could just like fucking feel a connection with some of these stones. And there was some I dug out with a fucking knife, but man, we fucking come through down this hill at one point, and we're like laughing our asses off, and we came through this like bunch of old people that looked at us like, we remember those days. You know what I mean? Fucking barefoot walking through a forest, carrying our shoes, picking up fucking rocks and shit. Just totally, oh my God, this one, you can feel the energy off it practically. One of the best fucking days I've had in I don't know how long, but I'd be afraid of like taking mushrooms running and literally just like falling because I seen that one. Oh my, so I could maybe I might get too in tuned.
No,
Well,
I think you'll tune into the running rather than the rocks when you're on the run.
so talk about tuning into things. It's weird how our body does that. Great example, me and one of my best friends back in Iowa, him and I decided to eat some mushrooms, go out to my grandparents' farm. And while we're out there, it was nighttime. It wasn't daytime. We didn't have flashlights. We didn't have nothing. We wanted to go fucking explore the fucking woods. And as we're walking, I'm like, yo, hey, real quick before we get going, listen, if something comes running up on us, do not fucking take off running, okay? Because we don't know where the fuck we're going to end up. We might hit a fence. We don't know, okay? Just stay calm. He's like, why are you saying that? I was like, I don't know. Just something's telling me something's coming up on us. Okay. So we get walking further, and all of a sudden we see these fucking eyes, and we see another set of eyes, and we're like, what the fuck is that? And all of a sudden we hear, boom, 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 boom. Next thing we know, fucking horses are up in our face. My buddy, he said, oh my God, if you would not have told me not to run, I would have fucking ran so hard. I was scared shitless, not knowing what those eyes were, and all of a sudden hearing something coming up on us, like you said. He's like, bro, you saved me from fucking freaking out and running through the woods and getting lost. Yeah.
And possibly getting trampled.
Well, being in tune with things, for some reason, I knew something was coming up on us.
Yeah. I mean, You don't want to be running around any animal. It freaks them out, right? Like
Oh,
a horse, you don't want a horse stepping even on your toe, man. That'll break your toes. Like,
but getting back to why we were talking about mushrooms, mycelium. So as you cultivate and you learn that trichoderma is your worst enemy, any trichoderma gets into the medium, your manure, whatever it's eating, it starts to overtake the mycelium and kills everything off.
competes for nutrients in space, basically.
So it's competing. So getting back to when we're adding recharge to our soils and are we killing off the mycelium and not allowing it to actually take hold, because the trichoderma at that point is now overtaking the food sources. Because I can show you one of my bins that is now being overrun with trichoderma, and it has stopped the flushing of the mushrooms. And so that's why I wanted to, kind of bring it to the attention of when we're using different biology in our soils, some of it is not quite as beneficial. Yes, trichoderma is, and there are great benefits that our plants receive from it. But what about the mycelium? And I thought it's all about these mycelium networks that we're trying to create that's reaching out to get this food. If it's not there anymore because the trichoderma is out competing it, is it beneficial?
I also wonder if on a grander scale, all that stuff sort of cycles back and forth, as it's balancing out of the soil. And I wonder, like, there's so much complexity, right? Like it really just leads to more questions more than anything. But I'm with you on your train of thought. I like your where you're going.
Well, because I love living soil. I know I can't use or do any feeding amendment teas, be around my nutrients or around possibly my living soil where I could contaminate my then grow kits, my mushroom kits, even edible mushrooms, oyster shells, lion's mane, stuff like that you're trying to grow in different grow bags. Trichoderma will outcompete them. So I am not real big on using trichoderma a lot of the times in my grows.
And honestly, if you start trying to cultivate any type of mushrooms, you'll find trichoderma is everywhere. It's the one thing you're always fighting constantly. That stuff shows up constant.
It is one of the quickest things to show up breaking down in a compost bin. When you start seeing green fuzz, it actually starts off white and then turns green. Yeah.
Green.
Yep.
Yeah, all the crazy colors and the fungi looking stuff. Yeah, that's probably a trick.
So, Eagle, back to when you're talking about you had mushrooms popping up in your pot, you didn't have a lot of trichoderma in there, or probably none at all, to have the mycelium really running in that soil.
Yeah. And remember those, let's go back to what mycelium do real quick, huh? Because that's an important factor here. Like mycelium break down in the soil, they digest nutrients in the soil down to, well, it can't be digested anymore. What you end up with is 38 to 42% lipophilic acid. It is basically a fat. So just like us humans, when we take on excess energy and we can store it as a fat, the soil stores it as a fat, but that's humates. That's carbons and humates and fats. And so that's what the fungi actually do. They digest it down to where it can't be digested anymore. And then it's stored in the form of carbons and fats. And that's a huge reserve in the soil of energy available to plants, fungi, and anything else that can access that soil network. So when you have that whole community running, that whole thing they can tap that energy reserve very rapidly. So that's part of why those humates and that kind of stuff play such an integral role in some of this living soil stuff for us.
Well,
and folic acids are derived from part of that.
And keep in mind that your mycelium fungi are breaking down more of your wood pulpy type of material, not the
Right.
greens.
Correct.
The trichoderma are then looking at the greens, your other easier like compost, like my produce. If I have a bucket in the house that I'm just throwing produce in to break it down, over time I will see trichoderma start on the food itself.
And interesting to note while we're talking about wood and fungi and breaking things down, the fungi, when they break down wood, one of the byproducts that they produce, you know what it is? DMSO, dimethyl methane.
What did we just talk to Eagle about DSMO?
We did just talk to Eagle about DMSO, and that's also the precursor in the human body to MSM, or methyl methane, which you'll often see paired with glucosamine. And it's a very, very powerful tool to use for healing, especially for fractures, bone injury, all that kind of stuff. So that's another thing to think about in the scheme of all of the picture of the stuff we're talking about here. It all really does relate on many levels.
So I believe, I've found, I've said this a lot. We echo plants in a lot of ways. So one of the things I thought about the other day, I was talking about this on the Weed Nerd World yesterday. So I was looking into some of the problems I'm having with the shin splint and how proper care and pressure, keeping it on it, keeping the blood flow going was one of those things. One of the things that was said during the research of care of the leg, keeping the blood flow going properly, and this was a new learning experience to me. So this will lead up to kind of the microbes. But one of the things that I thought was odd, because I've learned a lot of things in my journey through organics, learning things, how microbes mainly affect us and how similar they are with us, breaking down nutrients and shit like that. But one of the other parallels I found between us and the plant was obviously there's a xylem and phloem on the plant, up and down, right? So one of the weird things I thought paralleled us with the plant one more time was how blood flowed in the body. There's arteries pushing, blood down in the veins, bringing it back up to the heart. So kind of two different processes there, just like kind of paralleling in the plant a little bit.
Well, and there's also another system there, which I think actually kind of mimics the xylem phloem even more. Like that's sort of like the vascular system, right? But there's also the lymph system in the human body, which is a huge part of the cleansing system for the body, about cleansing infection and stuff out. I wonder if there's something similar like that in plants, or if they perform that function, that phloem and xylem.
So kind of multi questions here with the trichoderm. There is, so if we are so much like plants, is it bad for us as gardeners to be, having it with us? Is it something that if we breathe it in, can it take over the microbes in our system and create some bad shit? And then back to kind of it relating to cannabis, I've heard good things both ways. People say, oh yeah, it's a great additive, but not that I've heard on the other side of that. Man, I put it out in my yard and it fucking took over the fucking yard, killed over everything else. Now, I would think maybe that would be a good thing, because I've always added microbes if I were in cocoa or not. So say like we're using a medium like ProMix, would it be beneficial to add it to there? Because now we're not looking at a diversity, you know what I mean, of microbes. So can it benefit in like certain mediums if you're not necessarily pushing organics? But I could think it to be bad now if we were in beds, or now we're pushing a limiting soil system, because I would think the microbes, the diversity of microbes is health, right? You'd be able to each one fight and
No.
You want them choked out. You only want a few.
So here's a great example.
Healthy competition, right?
If you walked into a house full of black mold and you're breathing it in, you could get sick and die from it. it can overrun and compromise your immune system, and your body's full of microorganisms, more than living cells. So
We are already. Shit, there's more microbes and DNA in this meat sack.
so when you have something like a black mold that's so toxic that if you're living in it, it can kill you. So there are bad things that you don't want to take in, breathe in. Same thing with your soil. There's bad pathogens that are in there that can destroy, especially if they're able to outcompete all the good ones.
And then this is the perfect point for me to jump in here, because let's always remember that environment dictates gene expression, and that's universal. That's plants, animals, humans, mushrooms, microbes, nematodes. Doesn't matter what it is. That environment dictates that expression. So if you have a healthy environment, right? And again, this is like, I bet some trichoderma is good. I bet too much is too much, right? You want a little trichoderma, you want a little bit of this fungi, a little bit of that fungi.
Balance.
Communities balanced, operating and exchanging all their different functions, because each one of those performs a function within that system at the end of the day, right? So
Yes.
as long as they're performing their health function within that system, they're doing well. Now, phytophthora, for example, is something that can affect all different crops, but like it's a huge problem with tomatoes sometimes, right? And that's one that actually that can be in the field in the same population, and depending on the condition of the nutrients and the environment, the plants in that field can actually use that as beneficially, or it can kill the plant or stop the plant from yielding. So again, it's how you set the environment is really how you know, doing that expression, right? And then that's what you were talking about there, exactly, Eagle, when you said, you know, what if you put it in ProMix versus what do you put it in living soil? That's exactly what we're doing here. We're talking about changing environment, and we're doing it in the soil. It's just hard for us to see it because we're not immersed in that environment. That's my comment.
And so you have things that will outcompete, like trichoderma, outcompeting the fungi and mycelium for food. You have other pathogens, if they, E. coli, salmonella, if they do not have anything to keep them in check, balance, they will start to outcompete, grow. That's why we start to get sick, why we have outbreaks on our food, because there's no good biology to keep the bad biology in check. And so same thing with our bodies. If we're taking ibuprofen is a good one. It kills your fucking biota in your gut. Aspirin does the same thing. When we're taking this stuff, we're destroying our gut biota. Well, now we get a cold. It's harder for us to fight a cold because our gut biota is weak and our immune system is weakened.
I have a saying that I remind myself, real simple with it: infect to protect. Infect yourself with good stuff, and you protect yourself from the bad stuff. Pretty simple, man. You overpopulate with this, another population can't get in. You know, it's like you try to occupy another island where somebody's already living there. It's a lot harder to take control of that colony than if that island is empty, right?
Well, so look at Bacillus. Bacillus is as aggressive when it comes to competing for food, but it doesn't stop fungi like trichoderma. So if I have Bacillus in my soil, I'm going to still get it to break down the nutrients just like trichoderma, but it's not, yes, they'll coexist and not outcompete each other.
Yeah. And then there are others that are antagonistic with each other. So those are all things to have in context too. And, you know, hard to keep knowledge on all that, I guess, right? But
there's a lot of information.
But at the end of the day, if you're trying to achieve balance and facilitate living systems, you understand you're trying to not kill anything and always keep the living system functioning. I think those are good base principles to work on. You just expand knowledge base as you go. Right?
We have a problem. We believe we have to shower every day. I don't. I shower maybe once, maybe twice a week, if that. I don't have body odor. I don't stink. Yep. I have the natural biology. They're doing what it does to keep the odors, the bad biology out and down.
Yep.
So we're washing this stuff off and leaving chlorine on our skin, which is doing more damage than the living biology. Same thing, brushing your teeth. Oh, brush your teeth, brush your teeth. You're destroying the biology that protect your teeth. That's why people are getting cavities, eating these sugars that are high sugars that the biology wants to consume and eat. Like, we need to understand how important keeping a balance in our body is, and not destroying our own biome on our skin and our gut.
I can so relate to that, and I can tell you, man, like I had so many teeth problems when I was younger because I didn't understand those things, and I struggled the last couple of years with my teeth a lot, and I finally nailed it. I finally figured out whole vitamin C, not ascorbic acid, huge difference, and these are B vitamins, nutritional yeast, right? And once I did that and squared away the diet stuff, bang, no more teeth problems, no more sore gums, no more cavities, no more that. And I cut out the sugar. Total difference in oral health. And I wish I'd known that 20 years ago because I'd still have a lot more teeth, man.
Best thing I've done for my teeth lately, to be honest with you, is coconut oil pulls.
Yep, those are great. Those are great. Add peppermint, clove, and there's one other oil to that. I'll shoot you a link on it. But man, yeah, awesome.
So when we talk about, fungus and stuff like that in our gardens, is there a way that we can incorporate some of these beneficial mushrooms in our garden and that would be beneficial for our cultivation and us? I mean, I know they grow in different places. Some grow on trees, some grow in the soil. I take a wide variety myself in my medicine cabinet. As I already said, chagas there, St. John's wort, lion's mane, cordyceps.
I've got the Paul Stamets 17 species blend.
Yeah.
That's what I take. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is there some of these that are either good to eat or beneficial medically that we can grow? I mean, we've heard of like mushroom rags and it's beneficial. Is it beneficial for our soil that it puts out, if we can get them to fruit, they're off-gassing correctly for the plant. So is there fruiting bodies? Is there stuff that benefits the soil and us that we can incorporate in our living beds in our gardens, or is it still too experimental yet? I know there's a few trying it, but
Well, some of them are wood-eating species, so it's harder to do it in our beds in the soil. You're gonna have to do like a mulch bed at that point.
Yeah,
because that's what they're looking
too much
for.
wood in there to take all your nitrogen out on you. You got to be careful about how you balance other things around it, right? Like that's really the trick of it.
I just want to say it doesn't really take the nitrogen out. The microbes use the nitrogen when they're breaking down the carbon.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. I was just seeing it on the equational end of things there, but yeah, you're right.
So, Eagle, you going back to what you were talking about, your legs and the blood flow and this and that. One, compression socks, because the blood pools up in runners, that especially long distance runners. So you need to watch that when you sit still because your blood's used to pumping so hard, it's not no more. The other is niacin. It's one of Paul Stamets talks about. It's a vascular dilator. It helps open your veins and gets better blood flow to your whole body. Sometimes when you take too much, because I used to teach my friends how to take niacin to pass piss test because it helps them. You get that niacin itch, but your body flushes. You can flush everything out of your body to do piss tests. You just have to know when to do it before you go pee. But yeah, it's a great vascular dilator. I mean, it's bronchial vascular too. So when you're running, it's going to help open your breathing.
Yep, it'll make a huge difference.
always open to learn, that's for sure.
Personal trainer for early 2000s, like I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to health and fitness. That's why I'm medically fit. But, not a lot of people ask me or talk to me about it because they want to talk more about growing and cultivating and not the actual benefits and the healing properties and what you could do for yourself, like holistically, because that's the way I learned coming up through the fitness industry is holistic healing and how to and what you can do on taking like more medicines like niacin to help with open up your veins, when people have like restrictions or their blood's, how do I want to say it, too clotted. You need something to kind of help open it up. That helps to deal with blood clots, or how do I want to say, like if you had to have heart surgery, all the cholesterol buildup.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to help your veins, your body deal with that and get a little better blood flow dealing with shit like that.
And honestly, for healing and blood flow in general, that entire B vitamin range is a very powerful tool set. Should be done non-synthetic, should be from nutritional yeast. Another great one, especially for nerve issues, is B1 benfotiamine. It's a fat-soluble form of B1, about 25 times more soluble into human brain and nerve tissue than typical B1 supplements. I use that daily. Very powerful tool also. Great work with, especially when you combine it with the psilocybin, the stamina stack, and those pieces. Tremendous.
What's all in the stamen stack there? How many? What's the variety?
Well, the three he talks about for tapping right
Five.
away. Yes, but there's three main ones that he really talks about, and that's psilocybin, niacin, and lion's mane. Lion's mane does the brain repair, where the psilocybin does brain repair, and the niacin helps open the veins, the vascular part of it, so it can get in there without being constricted and fighting it. Because some reason psilocybin likes to restrict stuff.
Yeah, it restricts blood flow by
Yep.
default. So you need something to open blood flow up. So that's why niacin, aka B3, that pops the blood flow open and lets it into all the cells. The other two in that 5 stack, I think, are cordyceps and what's the other one?
Not turkey tail.
It is
I
turkey.
asked you
Yes,
guys.
it is turkey tail. It is turkey tail. Cordyceps and turkey tail.
Turkey tail is great because it's one of the ones that is supposed to help fight cancer.
It's an immune modulator. It's a great immune modulator.
Yes.
Tremendous research on that.
And so living in Michigan, you should be able to go through the forest and find trees that are laying on their sides, decomposing, turkey tail growing all over them.
You know,
Everywhere.
I do live in a perfect place to go out there and mushroom hunt. Actually, when I first started using the chaga, I was actually up in fucking northern Michigan. We stopped fucking at a health food store in the middle of fucking nowhere, and we went in to buy chaga for tea bags for chaga, and they had some, and they were not cheap. And the lady just like, force is full of it around here. You know what I mean? You could have fucking. I'm like, yeah, I couldn't properly identify it. I don't, you know what I mean? So even if we do find these things, because I would love to, you know what I mean? All lion's mane and shit, expensive. Anything that they, as the rave catches on, the price kind of spikes on that.
So a couple things on that. Number one, also how to use them correctly. Chaga is an important one with that. Like you're supposed to actually scrape the outer and the inner part of the chaga and get both portions of that because they both have different sets of beta glucans in them. And that's part of that immune modulator, right? So if you just take that whole block and throw it in the thing and boil it for an hour and a half or whatever, you're not getting the same effect as if you take it and you scrape off some of it and you boil that. And that's your preparation for this dosage, right? So that's just another example of those pieces. And then you mentioned lion's mane. Man, that's so easy to grow with some wood chips and some inoculants. That's something you can learn real easy.
Yeah.
It's all health. I mean, when we talked about, that's why we got most of us are in cannabis right now is we're looking for a better health. You know what I mean? And it's kind of awesome with further we dig into the plant, the soil, the more goodness that we kind of pull out of the soil and stuff.
It's actually what the cannabis is what drove me into gardening and farming passion, and that's what drove me into the human health and like all of that, right? It's like they kind of like interlock with each other over time and they kind of drive each other. It's pretty cool to see how many times those pieces keep tying back from all different crazy angles. It's the same thing, the same like study and mimic nature, man. That shit works.
Health and fitness, like exercise is a big part of fitness and health. And a lot of people don't really get that component in their lifestyle. And that's where we start to have a lot of the other issues come abroad because fitness, either lifting weights or exercise, and there's different ways what you can call exercise, but it's the duration and the length of period that you're doing it for, the intensity is where it helps and has the benefits, and people, when they start to understand that, they can incorporate doing stuff just around the yard to get their heart rate up, doing stuff around the house that helps get their heart rate up. And that's all, your body's looking for is get the heart rate up. And a lot of people just don't do that.
Dude, something even as simple as put on some music and like just like move around and dance while you're like cleaning or whatever. Like, you're moving, you're getting your heart rate up, you're getting blood flow going. Believe it or not, even that little bit, like in those winter days that I've been locked in for a month, man, just that little bit, I'm like, wow, I feel better just from moving around. Holy cow.
Well, so think about what we're doing for the microbes, Eagle. I mean, if we're healthy, exercising, what are the microbes doing? I mean, they must be fucking like, oh my God, we're really getting all this good nutrition and we're really fighting all the bad pathogens and helping fight these cancer cells. And, like
our community is strong.
Yes.
I've had, when we talk about like fungi and microbes and all that shit, I've had some fucking pretty good trips wondering who's really in control. If it isn't them running us, or you know what I mean, how much are we really in control with the fungi and stuff like that? I mean, they are adapting, they're eating plastics, they're fixing the fucking planet. You know what I mean? They're fixing nuclear waste, they're fixing the soil. We can use them for composting. I've got a bottle of fucking shampoo in there that's fucking mushroom based, or a body cleaner. You know what I mean? We're using them for soaps. We're fucking. They're in our body. The only thing that keeps the microbes and the fungus from overrunning us is a simple matter of temperature. So once they adapt to that, I mean, are we really? So if that's if that's the borderline, and they're more for fungus and microbes than us than DNA, and temperature is the only thing that's that control factor there of who's really in control. Who's really in control here? You know what I mean? We already think about the microbes and fungus and shit in our gut being a second brain. You know what I mean? We think that the plants are communicating through it. Who's not to say that telepathically, that's not how we would communicate if we couldn't verbally understand words and shit.
Well,
I wonder seriously how much we are in control with the microbes.
Eagle, add the bees on top of needing mycelium for their health benefits. To save the bees, we need more mycelium. And that's how important it is because they take it back and that's what they feed to the pupils. Go ahead.
So one mushroom that you should grow in your garden, no matter where you are anywhere, is the giant mushroom, the giant garden mushroom, because the honeybees use that and that helps them fight the varroa mite infestation. My 2 cents. Go ahead.
That's where I was coming with the mycelium, the mites, how it will fight and help save the pupil and the larvae and not be destroyed. And it's food for them. And when we're eating mushrooms, it's feeding our biome just like the bees. And look, we're spraying all these herbicides, pesticides, insecticides, and it's destroying the fungus, which the bees are now dying, and we're having problems with pollination. And if we don't save the bees type shit, we're in dire problems. And going back to the mycelium, how important it really is.
Understanding that the mycelium really is the fiber optic network of the universe on every scale and every level. And that's what fosters the communication. So if you kill that network, you kill all calm and nothing works, nothing happens. Just like shut the internet off. But for life.
Even as we noted last week on the audio on the last episode, they're even in our drinks. Mr. Lowenfels was drinking his mushroom elixir. You know, that shit's good. If you haven't tried that shit, it's delicious. A root beer, they make a root beer and a cola of the mushroom pop there. It's pretty good. Just saying, root beer is delicious. So where do we go from microbes and mushrooms? What else we got here?
I'd like to hear Mr. Smiley's thoughts. He's been awfully quiet over there.
No, I know. That's why I'm asking.
I'm not a mushroom expert, man. I'm no, it's not really my thing, I guess.
But you always have great insight. I'll draw your insight out.
I think, like trichoderm is everywhere, so I don't think that whole thing of them competing maybe adding it in an excessive amount might cause something. I think when you're looking at it from a mycology standpoint, my understanding is you're trying to create the sterile environment so that specific thing can grow, whatever mushroom you're growing.
Yep.
And when there's contamination, it's because that trichoderma is in the air. The trichoderma just happens to be a faster growing
By far.
organism than what the mushroom is, so it outpaces it that way. But in my understanding in like diversity in the soil is that is going to all kind of balance itself out, and then there's a range in all the diversity. So like we've been mentioning maybe 50 different species of things, and in reality, like a full functioning ecosystem in the soil is going to be billions. Billions of different species, and all these things happening in different times. But my experience, like trying to get like the garden giant, the red cap mushroom or whatever, anyway, the garden giants they call, but I haven't had much luck getting those going, and I think it comes down to having that environment, but having the right like food source for them.
Wait, did you say red cap?
I don't think that didn't sound right to me.
Giant garden mushroom, right? Isn't that what you're talking about?
Yeah, they're called
Because-
the garden giant. I know that.
Because I would think
Wine cap, that's what it was. Wine cap.
Amanita. Okay.
It didn't sound right to me, but wine cap is the one. Yeah.
Wine cap. Oh, okay.
But I mean, I think a lot of it, even in like the whole soil food web, the more I've kind of dove down that, it all seems to come back to, the soil structure, how the water goes through, how it breathes, the food source that's there, and
Well,
that all plays the biggest role into what's actually going to establish, regardless of what you try to inoculate. You know what I'm saying? Like that plays a bigger role. It's like throwing all kinds of animals at the desert, right? There's only a handful of them that are going to be able to really survive in that environment. You know what I'm saying?
And if we take that back to the simplicity of it, like what do we do in our grow tents and grow rooms? We set that environment first. We make sure we got the light, the humidity, the nutrient, all those pieces have to be there for you. Ever try to grow a plant. Otherwise, you ain't going to grow a plant.
but there's somebody breaking the stereotypical response to this, because he is literally growing cybacillin type psychedelic mushrooms with cover crop, and they are growing, not competing, not fighting, growing together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Gus always did that too. He's got his Gus Tech that he does, and I know he grows mushrooms. I do know he has a technique. There's a lot that it's not just a matter of putting the spores in there. You know what I mean?
Gotta
And
hear
that's
more
what I
about
was
that.
getting at is you got to kind of you have to look at the soil as that environment as well, and how that environment is going to dictate what is really growing in there. So when we talk about watering, I mean, if you're overwatering, you're creating an environment that's going to dictate what's going to propagate, and that's where, I think a lot of that whole, like, you can encapsulate all of it, right? The billion different names that you can come up with that we're going to find that we haven't even found yet. All these different things happening in the soil kind of funnels down to that. It's just, it's a matter of the environment and what's going on in that structure in the soil to what's going to really be taking over and dominating.
Well, and that's my question, because like doing the cultivation and sterile kit, and then you get the contamination of the trichoderma, how much different is the cover crop helping stop the trichoderma from overtaking, because the biology that's down around the root zone, the rhizosphere of the other plants, keeping everything in a balance where the trichoderma then are no longer getting out of control and allowing it to grow. So I have a lot of questions that I still ask about some of this stuff too myself. So
Well, and it's the same idea of, like, the great microbial collapse, right? When that was a big topic or an argument, but it literally is something that you can have happen. If you pour in a really rapid food source, a sugar source into a soil media, you're going to have a rapid explosion of certain types of biology. And then that population, when that sugar source is gone, is going to have to collapse because it doesn't have the food source. You're going to get a boom bust in that. I've witnessed it. I've done it myself. I've seen it in action. Like, it's literally what happens. So, and you can do that from a number of different things. I've done that from just having an alfalfa tea that I made, and I poured it in a pretty good concentration, and I noticed a good boom bust that happened in the soil biology. So, and it happens over a week to 10 days. It's not like the next day. The next few days, really, you get a good response out of the plant, and you think, oh gosh, I really did something cool, and the plant really liked it. It's that week after that you notice the crash go on, and then the plant doesn't seem happy. Sometimes you try the next thing again, whatever, but it's usually comes down to that you created a scenario that annihilated all the beneficial stuff you had going on in that soil. And then it's a lot of hard work to get it back. It's not a matter of I mean, even with extreme drybacks and flush, I think that's the big hard thing about having a small living soil pot, is being able to control that moisture content through there, because you're basically dictating what's being propagated in that environment. Now I said too much, huh?
no, like, we're letting everybody kind of catch up and listen, and there's a lot of information to it. Like, it's still not a science. I mean, we're still figuring things out. Like, it's interesting that watching how, we're told that we got to keep everything a sterile environment to cultivate mushrooms, but here really we don't need to. We just need to find that balance in the moisture content, because mushrooms actually like a little bit humidity, higher wet moisture environment, where according to most people, you're overwatering your plants at that point. But are you? I mean, is the mycelium growing through it and producing mushrooms? Is that a bad thing? They're breaking things down and doing what they're supposed to be doing in the soil.
That's where I think, honestly, where so many people struggle with trying to grow on soil and organics is trying to find that sweet spot. You know what I mean? We're trying to feed or water and worry about the cannabis plant, but when we worry about a singular thing, it does throw off the balance. When we're trying the little dry bags, oh, we think it's too wet, we're too dry. We are creating pockets of plus or ick sometimes, good shit, bad shit, but we're throwing shit off balance, and it's tough for us as growers to dictate that sweet spot. We haven't figured that out. There's science behind that, or nature science, but it's tough for us as growers. And then with us being greedy about it. You know what I mean? We're always trying to push for yield and quality. Let's add this again. We're doing it right now. Hey, which is the better microbe? Can we add mushrooms? How can we supercharge this shit? You know what I mean? When each one of those things complicates the overall process. You know what I mean? It's a tough balance. It really is. You know, organics isn't cut and dry. It's a beautiful system. That's you know, I think we fuck it all up. I really do. I think we fuck it up by trying to find that sweet spot that's here, there, whatever. I don't know.
Well, and that's why I enjoy the two ways of living soil as just my no-till beds, trying to do the cover crops, roll and crimp, drop and drop, whatever you want, not really doing much amending, letting the biology do its still. And then the other is super soil, where everything's mixed in, broken down, and I'm just watering, and I'm not doing many teas or adding biological inoculants and trying to change everything in there. Like, when you start doing that and changing even my recipe, outcomes are different. Sometimes they're not good.
So that's kind of one of the things. Again, I not to keep kind of complicating or fucking flipping things around, but again, when we talk about our gardens, our plants, and trichoderma in particular, one of the things we've talked about the most today. Um, when is it beneficial? When is it not? If I'm going to grow in a pot and it's only a one cycle deal, is it better? You know what I mean? It's not so bad to kind of. And I heard again, Smiley, heavy. You mentioned the term heavy handed. You know what I mean? So is it a teaspoon? Is it, you know what I mean? Is potty, I mean, when transplanting to me back in the day when I was really worried about adding microbes, to what I was using, it would be a nice kind of moist root ball there that I'd sprinkle. I would not damn near want that fucker white before I put it boom into the fucking hole. So is that too much? Is it again? What's too much? What's heavy handed? Multiple cycle use in a cycle. You know what I mean? Where's that? Is there a sweet spot?
I don't know. I mean, it's really just going to depend on what your situation is. But yeah, I mean, I don't really add any of that stuff anymore. I mean, and I don't know
Again,
if
I
it's good
said
or
yes
bad or
too.
not, but it's no, yeah, I don't. I've kind of gone back to just trying to focus on like the complete soil food web and trying to do my best to function that. Um,
I'm the
I've
same.
even kind of come to the idea that if I see an issue going on with the plant, the first thought is, oh, this deficiency or that deficiency, but really I'm trying to get back into the thought of if there's a deficiency, it just means that I don't have, the biology functioning properly.
The balance
I
is
should
out.
try to, inoculate again or do something different. And it's just a matter of trying to shift your brain onto that idea.
I don't think people necessarily identified deficiency the proper way anyway. I don't think necessarily they take the whole plan into effect. If they're just seeing, yellow leaves and shit in the bottom of the plant, the top of the plant,
Well,
is it the whole plant? Is it a mobile nutrient? We've kind of talked about this in the past. I don't think when it comes to deficiencies, people necessarily diagnose. And then again, we get back to let's throw the toolbox at it. You know what I mean? Now we're fucked up now we fucked it up even more because we haven't properly, looked at
exactly to your point there, Eagle. That's one of the things John Kemp talks about all the time is how, in addressing deficiencies, sometimes we should be looking for the excess that we're doing that's causing the deficiency. And so if you just see the deficiency and try to correct that, and there's actually an excess that's causing that deficiency, you're not even looking at the picture correctly. So most of the time when we look at a plant that's unhealthy, we probably really aren't understanding well You know, until you take a plant sap analysis of that and have a real clear picture of what actually is going on in the plant sap of that plant at the current time, like an actual snapshot, you really don't know. So it's like it's hard to diagnose on that. And I'm in Smiley's camp at this point. Like I've been screwing with soils for a long time, man. And the thing I've come back to is like try to get a balanced soil mix base and run that. And then when your plants do something weird, look out for what environmental factors did you screw with. And I'm still tuning myself in on that, man. I'm still finding like, oh, hey, yep, I turned that humidifier off a couple days ago. That's why things are weird in here. It's not growing as well as it should be. Little simple things like that make a huge, huge, huge difference. So really pay attention to that environment in those pieces.
Well, okay, same thing as Mother Nature, right? Every year she's not producing the same nutrients as the year before.
Yep.
Leaves drop, get blown away. They don't always stay. Or somebody goes through and rakes their yard and picks up all the material. And so the lawn or, you know, your trees aren't getting the nutrients they should. So even outdoor shit changes all the time within Mother Nature and what plants are getting fed and not fed.
The environment's never the same either. That changed
No,
year too.
every year the summer is not the same as the year before, or the winters are not the same. Like it might be warm or one really cold winter. You know, like it's always changing.
One I've noticed lately, people always say, "No, I don't understand why some years the pine trees have so many pine cones and other years they don't." It's like, well, if you looked at the variation in seasons, one year we had like rain all year long, cold, rainy, wet. Another year we had like sunny, hot, dry. Like, of course you're going to get different results.
Well, if you look at trees, if you cut a tree down and you look at the tree rings, the bigger the ring, the more rain it's supposed to have in that season.
Yeah.
And so you can see when there are a lot of dry seasons and a lot of wet, rainy seasons, and sometimes they're 20, 30 years apart before they have a wet season into a dry season.
Yeah, you can see those sort of like sub cycles inside the greater cycle, right? Like,
Yes. And so we're doing kind of the same thing, trying to provide the best environment we can for our plants, but things do change. Your nutrients that you're getting from the store, whether bottled or dried down to earth amendments, they are changing. Their sources are changing. So even when you think you're on top of your game and all of a sudden you go do something you've done every time the same as before, something bad happened. Well, what happened? Well, look at your sources. What changed in your sources? Because we forget about that. We're I'm using this nutrient regimen and I've used it for 20 years. Well, have you had a problem once in a while with it? Like the nutrients sat too long on a shelf and there wasn't really anything available, or you know, like your down to earth amendments when you look at some of like the fishbone meal or something like that. I've had it be like a 412 something else, and then another time go get it, it's a 316 something else, and I'm like, I have the old box and I'm looking at them and comparing them, and it's the same product, but
and
it's
those
different ratios. Yeah.
And those standards aren't even what's in the bottle. That's minimum of what's supposed to be in the bottle. That's only has to be minimum. That ratio could be way off from what it says in there. As long as it meets enough to make that minimum requirement, it meets that standard. So you got to watch out, man. Those soil mixes can go, or those nutrient mixes can change dramatically over time. And so
now let's talk about your indoor lighting. Every year you're running your light, how less efficient is your lighting getting?
Yep.
You got it at 80%, and that's what you've been running it, but it's 20% less efficient than it was when you got it. Yep. And it's 2 years down the road, and now the intensity is not there. And are you paying attention to some of that? Because a lot of us don't talk about that on our channels and lighting.
Yep.
Once again, there's a change in the environment. Our expressions in our plants are going to change. The biology is going to act differently. But yet we don't really discuss that a lot.
But it's something we should pay attention to.
Yes, and that's why we try to talk about it. So, you know, all these newbie growers
That's why we
Nah.
keep sledgehammering you in the head about it every time we talk.
We got to get them to understand. Listen, there's so many environmental changes and conditions that happen all the time. For you to get the same grow year after year, time and time again, I'm not saying it's impossible.
It ain't easy.
It ain't easy.
Well, it's something known. I mean, even in like wines, they talk about that. Oh, that was a great year for this particular grape. So this particular vintage of wine is, you know, what I mean, considered high quality or whatever.
I've never had a same year as before on tomatoes, corn, any crop I've grown, and I've grown those crops for 20, 30, almost 40 years now, some of them. And I've never had same type of crop year, same result year. Never. Never a repeat. I've grown the same variety for so many years and never a repeat. It's crazy. It's crazy. So it's like I got to a point with the farming and where I was canning my own stuff where I would like, all right, we're gonna plan like when we get a bunker crop of tomatoes, we're gonna can like crazy because we might not get a good crop for another 2 or 3 years. And that really worked out. Like every third year you get really a bumper crop on something.
So does that have something to do with a little bit like what Lowenfels was talking about last year? So you're talking about adding plants that you plant every year and then establishing new root systems versus where we're talking about grapes, where that's something it has an established
Perennial, very different.
system.
Yeah.
It's already in, it's developing its own microbes, bacteria, and all that shit that he kind of said built terroir. You know what I mean? So is that what kind of builds the consistency? Is a plant that is constantly, you know what I mean? You're not restarting. You
That's
know
why
what I
that's
mean?
why that's why we like to integrate the permaculture with anything annual, because then you're keeping those communities functioning and alive in that ecosystem all the time, and they're around you, right? So when you plant an annual into it, you can plug into that system and not have to start a whole new community. The community is constant there and established. That's the theory.
Well, when it comes to grapes as well for wines, if you have a dry season, for some reason, grapes are sweeter.
You get a high sugar content because you have
A
less.
higher, yes. And so that's one thing that, oh, I want this because I want to have a certain wine. So I want a drier season. Well, it makes a difference. And, you know, the same thing to me and your cannabis. If
So
you let that dry cycle happen every once in a while, you're getting those stressors to happen. You're going to get a different expression, a little sweeter or a little creamier, or something's going to be a little different for you than normal.
Yeah, and there's two dials on that. Let's just talk about that. There's two push dials on this, right? There's a stressor push dial that'll give you a response, a positive response if you don't go too far. And there's also the nutrient side of it you could push. And if you push the nutrient side, you get the nutrient balanced right, and you push a little stressor behind it, you get a lot more gain out of it for flavonoids, polyphenols, THC content, all those like really hard to define terroir or flavors or whatever, right? Those pieces that are harder to get to really get amplified if you can work both of those pieces together.
So when I've heard the story, the gentleman that developed the microscope, when he actually finally developed that lens that he could actually see finer things into the soil, microorganisms and stuff like that, he was kind of fascinated by what was actually going on in the soil. And he got to the point to where when it come to wines, he could tell accurately how good your wine was by looking at a soil sample. He could tell you exactly how much sugars and everything that was going to be in it. So without even taste whatever, he would tell you the quality by the microbes in the soil. I always thought that was pretty fascinating. You could tell the end product by the microbes in the soil.
Well, and then let's tie that back for a second, because what does that tell you about the human taste capability? Because if we can taste that, we can detect that too, not with numbers and math or meters, right? But we're able to detect the difference there. We know the difference between a higher quality and lower quality, just with taste and smell. That's pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, you definitely, and tomatoes, peppers, you can taste the difference
And
in most vegetables that are grown hydroponically versus in a living soil system. Cannabis is the same way. A lot of us that talk about living soil say the quality of terpenes and the expression, the taste versus a hydro grown flower is completely different, because the taste is not there when you hit it with the flame. You might have the smell there, but it goes away when you hit it. Or when you blow out, you don't still taste it. It's not the same taste as what you smell like. So
That to me is that's a cured bud versus that's preservation, bacteria preservation. You know what I mean? Some of these machines we have now, these dryers, or the Myers now and shit. I've heard the bullshit about how bad that is. It's gonna turn your weed into fucking hay or whatever. I've had great quality with that thing. But what I'm trying to say here is you can get a cured cannabis where it's all you lose that individuality of that bud, that strain, through a long-term cure. You know what I mean? So in preservation, so in the quicker dry, a fresher smoke in cannabis, you can tell more the individual terps. You know, it's a quicker preservation. You haven't lost as much of the profile to where you let that plant go a little bit longer. You're letting them kind of blend a little bit into the fabric of the cannabis. The whole drying process kind of changes the terp profile. But I find that's why I prefer myself a fresher side of cannabis versus a long-term cure. I don't want it all to mix together and become something later on. I enjoy that inhale. That's pine. Oh my gosh, what is that on the back end? The variety in the terp profile. I prefer a fresher.
So
I agree with you, but I got to ask you now, are you not a fan of aged wines now? I just throw it out there because I'm with you. I like the fresh flavor too. Go ahead, man.
So here's my question though, Eagle. This fresh flavor that you talk about and discuss, have you not had a jar that's a year old still tastes the same as when you harvested it the year before? I have.
I've had that too.
I have. It has not lost many of the profile or expression, maybe some of the smaller terpenes, but when it came to popping open that jar a year later, it still smelt like it did when I harvested it.
That's such a fucking sweet spot. How many of us have put jars up, thought we had that cure on lock, opened it up, fucking hay, nasty smelling weed. It isn't that fucking long-term cure. That shit I make hash out of. It isn't. Only one fucking time has that, and this is sweet fucking honesty right here. Has that ever happened to me where I put or found something and it was like sweet kush? Pulled that bitch, couldn't stand it in the fucking phrases that I'm talking about. It wasn't a winner at all. I moved up north and fucking luckily found a fucking armoire that had a fucking jar of it stuffed in the back of it. I pulled that jar open and thought, this is delicious. If I'd known it could have tasted like this, I may have kept it. But that's the bitch about it. Now we're becoming fucking alchemists. That's one of the things we're already doing. Why don't we grow the strain for the fucking flavor it is? Why do we have to fucking cure it for 3 fucking years to turn it into something that might taste better than what we got? Why are we dumping other inputs into it to try to boost out different terpenes and stuff? Oh, I don't like it like this. I need to bring this out. I gotta stress it out so this will taste better. Why don't you just fucking change strains instead of playing the fucking garden alchemist and trying to change and bring things out? Oh, I'm going to give it 3 times. I'm going to crack it with a whip. And I'm going to cure it for 3 years to make it taste better. No, fucking get that thing out of the garden and put something new in there. Why are we trying to be alchemists with the shit and store it for 3 years? It's a fucking thing that degrades. I don't even want to wait 3 years. I fucking know. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not putting anything up for in a fucking year so I can enjoy it and for Christmas or whatever. I'm smoking. It's
No.
gonna be gone. I'm gonna be on another harvest.
My shit will
I'll
hang for my shit will hang for a week. It's popping, it's ready to go in jars. After that, maybe a week, I'm already trying to puff on it. By week 2 and week 3, I am definitely smoking on it. I am not waiting any longer at that point because I want those, to me, the freshest taste that I can get out of it. Because if we're talking cure time, 3 weeks to a month, okay, it's already hung for a week. Isn't that part of my cure time too, as well as being in the jars? Well, yeah, it is. So now it's in a jar for a week. There's 2 weeks. Oh, 2 weeks into jar now. Now I'm actually at 3 weeks of a cure time and not just a 2-week cure time.
To
So
them people, I tell you what, I'll give it to you fresh. You put it on your shelf for a year. I'm moving on to the next batch.
Yeah, but you gotta admit though, Eagle, when you get on jarred and you're I get it. I smoke it too. I'm smoking all the way along, right? But it is something about that after a good 8
Long
weeks
cure does have a
of
cool
kind of
feel.
in the jar, you've been popping it open, that you get that, I don't know, there's just a cleaner,
I
less
call it like the
smoke
final
to it.
cure, like
And
it's
it
the
doesn't
final
lose,
product.
yeah, you don't lose the terps, it doesn't change the terps, it's just a less harsh of a smoke to
The
it.
natural degradation of some of the nutrients left in that plant produces a cleaner burn. I don't necessarily think it's part of the cure myself. It's
But
time breaking down some of the shit that we fucking haven't flushed or hasn't become out of the plant. It's that extra nitrogen.
Well, the chlorophyll, first of all, you got to
That's
let
why you're
that kind of.
burping that air out of the jar. It's the nitrogen coming out of the bud. So
but to your point, Eagle, I'm with you. Like I just saw somebody a month or two ago, maybe it's 3, posted in one of the forums I'm in, talking about curing in a corn silk husk. And it's like a 3-month process, and it's this whole complex thing. And they're like, "Oh, but the flavor is amazing." And I'm like, I don't have 3 months to screw around with that and harvest corn husks, and like I just need to get a buzz and get on with what the frick I'm doing. Like, I can't imagine having that kind of time, but man, more power to them, I guess.
I think we dictate that there's so many little things that we do that does dictate the flavor. You know, I've said this a million times. As far as that flash cure, like you get in these the Cannabis, the Myers now, these drying machines that are proving that you are now getting a higher terpene profile because you're not losing as much through the long-term cure. Now, in
Well,
my mind, you're seeing a different terpene profile in the end because it isn't a living plant. You know what I mean? As long as there's moisture in that plant and the more moisture you provide, and that depends on if you're bucking that plant beforehand. And you know what I mean? There's little things like that. Are you taking all the fans off? And because that means it has more oxygen or more water, more nutrients to survive for a longer time in that drying time. And it's also going through another stress that is probably producing another terpene all on its own because now it's sending out a fucking signal to the other plants you're getting ready to be chopped. Now, secondly to that, you are, again, these things are going on in time. You know what I mean? There's still nutrients, there's still water, this plant's still doing things. Again, on top of that, you are now closing it in. The leaves are succumbing it. You are already starting a curing process because them terpenes are, again, already mixing together and sitting into like a gym bag effect to where it's now combining and soaking into the bud for a whole new flavor.
I'm about to fuck you up with this one. Listen,
I gotta
go
go
for it.
okay, hold on. Have you ever smoked freeze-dried weed?
No.
Oh,
No.
Okay, okay.
freeze-dried guns tonight.
Now you got to try it, okay? Because now you're freshly, wet trim, and you freeze dry it, and then it's way different. I know the Dude Grow Show had done it. They talked about it. My buddy Tanasi, Sacred 3 Mushrooms, he's done it. I smoked some of it. It's completely different tasting than drying and curing process. Like you don't even dry and cure at that point. It's just fucking freeze dried.
So
What I
I
was
guess
gonna get at you goes, there's a little different take though. What I always heard about it was like when you're drying the plant, you're getting the moisture to the content that you want it to be, and you're getting it stabilized. Then in the curing process, you're keeping that in that jar to keep a better, more stabilized, even tighter stabilized humidity level, right? And you're allowing the trichome heads to actually that wax kind of hardened over, and it creates a little different. That was always my understanding of it, is that that waxy cuticle at the end there, it gets this kind of harder shell on it, to where you're
Dries up in a sense.
right. Your sensation with your nose, I guess, is it may seem like that's less until you crack the bud, actually. You know what I mean? And you release some of that.
You're
I
dehydrated.
think a lot of that stuff's actually getting into that trichome a little. I don't know. And I don't know how legit that is, but that was always my understanding of it.
Also, isn't there decarboxylation going on during that drying curing process too, where it's like you're converting CBDs or CBGs to CBNs or something like that too? There's a carboxyloid conversion going on in that process, put that way.
Right, man. But
I've said that to people too about THC because of that process right there. I'm like, I argue the fact that you like THC.
Oh, Eagle,
You like oxidative.
I never make another batch of edibles again since we talked about that, and you were busting my chops about like, oh, so you like to decarb the crap out of it. And I was like, now I'm thinking about it every time I'm doing it. I'm like, maybe I should go a little shorter this time.
But again, so again on the long term cure, because as I like, and I'm always open to different perspectives. There's always that one thing you learn throughout life on everything that will spin your take. It's that way, one person that comes in with you, you're putting a puzzle together or building, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then somebody comes in and goes, you know what? You should put the door right there. And you go, oh my gosh.
That's a great idea.
So there's always something that gives you a new angle or whatever. I'm not saying I'm perfect or I'm set in my ways anyways. You know what I mean? But as I kind of say about the off gassing through the long term cure, we see a lot of bud being put on the shelves now and being sealed with nitrogen to long term storage of the terp profile. So is that what's kind of good, that some of the off gassing of that bud that I was bitching about that we burp out, is some of that beneficial for keeping the terps in the jar and good and healthy? Is some of that gases that are coming from the bud naturally a natural nitrogen storage almost?
I mean, I wonder too, does it off gas into the nitrogen just because it's nitrogen and the air is 78% nitrogen? Like, how much does it affect it? I mean, I know it takes the oxygen out, right? So you don't have that oxidation effect. But maybe
The only downside I've ever heard of the nitrogen storage is like it stored the cannabis well, looked good, but as soon as you broke it open within a small time, it just went to dust.
That's like freeze dried. It does the same thing.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask that.
Yep.
'Cause I've seen that with freeze dried food. It just kind of
Yep. It turns to dust. It's real brittle. Same thing with the mushrooms. The freeze dried, as soon as you touch it, they start to get real brittle, real instantly like powder. And so that's why you have to put them more in a jar versus a bag, where most people, just kind of throw the bag around. With the dried mushrooms, they're not going to just break and get real brittle versus freeze dried. But when it comes to like the glass jars, I think it also stops the oxygen degradation of the trichome, because it's not allowing oxygen into the jar. It's sealed. It's doing its off gassing. When you burp it, you're doing two things: releasing excess moisture that's in there and releasing whatever the off gas is, what you want to call it, happening. But then when you seal it back up, there's no real other oxygen getting back into it except that quick bit. So
also, let's remember, like anything plastic is still a membrane at the end of the day. Like you're saying, glass is a solid wall between outside and inside. And the plastic is not. We see it as a solid wall, but it's not. It's actually a membrane.
So here's the other thing. A lot of people that get dispensary weed, because we have a lot of people that do, most of that weed has set for 6 months or longer before it's even put on the shelf. Or it could be a year even. It just depends, because if they're not moving the weed that they have in the jars, the other stuff that's been harvested and coming in is sitting there until everything else is finished to move through.
They do
So-
rotation too.
I agree with Gus there. He's Gus, who we were speaking of earlier. Cheers, Gus. He says, "Hey, let's be honest. The only reason we long-term cure is because we got too much stock," and I fucking agree with that shit. And again, to argue, just and again, more for conversation than argument's sake. You know what I mean? The glass jar thing, plastic. I've had fucking glass jars leak on me. Multiple uses on the metal lids will let air in and kind of fuck things up. I've tried reusing plastic mason jar lids. Fail. You know what I mean? As much as we think we can cram that lid down, there's too many fucking recipes for failure for me in a long-term storage. And I know I'm not trying to beat this horse, but you know, there's molds, everything. I'd rather grow smaller crops, enjoy them fresh, than take the risk of fucking my shit turning bad on me. To be honest.
So you're talking mitotoxin and endotoxin type molds, and that is a big deal in the industry right now. Kevin McInerney is going to be discussing it at the next medical genomics deal that they have, big seminar or whatever. But it's a big deal in the industry now, because a lot of people that do pre-rolls and are around a lot of the cannabis now are having mitotoxin, endotoxin type toxicities, and they're trying to wonder why they're having these respiratory problems. And now they're kind of correlating it to some of our weed has these endotoxins to it. And
we kind of hit base with that. How many fucking weeks ago with the panic attacks and the heat and shit? I think a lot of people, the panic that they go through was from, they probably did either have smoked moldy weed or they are smoking moldy weed. That gives them that fucking. So, can you still get some of these effects that we talked about? Because a lot of that weed, they are finding ways around eradicating it with fucking UV. There's a lot of ways they're sneaking this nasty fucking dispo weed onto people. So even though it's been eradicated with light, is that still not? I mean, you inhale it and it gets wet again. We were just talking about, we can dig fucking shit up we can dig up soil and pull out a new microbe. All it needs is fucking a little bit of fucking air. So can that shit in your system and fire back up and cause anxiety, and you know what I mean?
okay, so let's go way back to when medical cannabis was funded by the government, and the government gave jars of cigarette type rolled joints. Pretty much it was weed, and this weed had set for a long time before it even got given to anybody. So how moldy and nasty do you think some of that weed was that was the first medical weed given to people? I mean, that shit set for years before some of it was given to people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, from the university there, I've heard and seen horror stories. They ground it up. They literally ground that shit up and fucking stored it in bags and shit after it was ground up.
Guys, don't get me started on this. It makes me so angry. All the crap that they pulled, it just makes me so angry. For God's sake. Enough said.
Yeah, I don't know.
So okay, Eagle, if that's the problem, what's too much weed then? What's too much weed for you?
I haven't hit that yet, really.
Well, is a pound of dried cured flower too much?
No, I would say a pound of dry cured flour, to be honest with you, would probably last me 2 months, maybe 2.25 months. By myself, I probably smoke an ounce a week. By myself, I smoke an ounce a week.
I go through about 2.5 a month myself. So that's a lot. For you to smoke, is that a day, Eagle? An ounce a day?
No, that's an ounce a week. An ounce a week myself, I would say. And with my significant other, well, I'd say two zips a week. So half pound a month. Yeah, we get 2 months on that pound. 2 months on that pound. So yeah, that's not too much. That's just a harvest. And even at that, no, I like to give it with friends. I like to smoke with friends. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, let's say this, and we all know this to be true. I smoke my roaches. I smoke my roaches. But if I had a pound of weed, I guarantee my roach size would get bigger. I would go through it a little bit
You'd be
faster.
much less conservative for sure.
So basically, in a sitting, you consume joints over like me, where I'm smoking bong.
All day joints. All day joints. And I'm finishing. I was joking about that yesterday in the wormhole. I'm a fucking finisher. If I like that bitch, I am committed. I am committed. I am finishing that thing down to my yeah. Yeah. I'm throwing it, yeah. I used to have a friend that would eat that shit. He would eat that roach because it was fucking already in edible form because it had been heated, oil. He was already on his way to an edible form.
He was ready to take it right up to the next level. That's awesome.
So when I had my
That's
outdoor greenhouse years ago, when I lived up in like Villa Grove, part of Colorado, I had pounds that's why I said I had one of my jars literally go a year and still smell the same. But having that much weed, Eagle, that's all we did was smoke fucking baseball bat joints all day long. We had so much to consume. That's all we would consume.
That's one of the beautiful things I think about. This is what I think about that is if you really knew the amount of weed that I smoked and then fucking do this, you wouldn't believe, it goes against everything we were ever taught about cannabis shit. Quite literally, I smoke it up on the way. I mean, I don't feel that cannabis is a negative thing. And yeah. Somebody asked me just yesterday if I thought cannabis hindered my running ability versus like cigarettes or what's. I'm completely different thing. I don't think the oils absorb into your lungs differently. I don't think it's no. I think it's completely to.
I've never had cannabis do anything other than enhance things that I do. I've never had it take away from anything.
But no, I smoke a lot of weed.
Okay, so real quick, because we're almost to the end of the show. Years ago, I did a video talking about smoking marijuana can cause cancer. And the biggest part of it was the carcinogenic part of paper, of consuming joints, is what is the biggest part of how men and some women can get cancers from consuming cannabis. It's not that cannabis is causing it, it's the carcinogenic
That's why I don't like all the flavored shit, like the flavored wraps or the flavored
I won't do any of
papers and
that.
that shit.
Don't
Even
need
if they're
no
like
ideas.
funky colors, I've seen papers that are like all like pink or blue or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're smoking all that dye and shit.
Yeah, you know that's a chemical,
Back
right?
to the weed
Like,
alchemy. If your weed's that bad, you got to put it in a fucking banana wrap. You're smoking the wrong fucking shit. Go back and go wherever you came from to get that shit. Grow different shit.
stop buying that Mexican brick and go get some good shit.
Yeah. Smoke good weed. You don't need flavored wraps. I'm right there with you on that shit. That is a very big market too. I've seen so many different flavored wraps these days, and I wonder,
I can't. There's something about flavored wraps. Not just plain ones aren't so bad, but flavored. It
Yeah.
makes me cough and gag so hard. I feel like I am literally throwing up mucus and a pile of it. And it's like, what the fuck? Where did that come from? Like, that is some nasty ass shit. And I don't get
That's
it
not
any other
responsible.
time. Yeah, I don't get it any other time smoking papers or hemp, blunt papers or something like that. But the flavored wraps, no, I will not do them. But one of my good friends, he smokes those and he knows I won't smoke it. Nope, I'll bring my own joint at that point if that's the case.
I'm the same way. I'm very strict that like I'll just smoke my own clean stuff, or like if it's somebody I know that I know has that same standard, we'll smoke together. But I'm not just smoking anybody's garbage. Like I don't know where it came from, who grew it, what I want nothing to do with it unless I know it's clean. Because it's disappointing usually.
That's a tough. That's a toughie. That's a toughie. In my position, to be honest with you, because a lot of people come up to you and say, "Hey, everybody's proud of your grow." You know what I mean? So it's hard to pass that joint when somebody comes up to me at one of these events and stuff like that. And I understand that. I get that. People and a lot of people I know and hang with are very selective on who they're taking that joint from. And it's one of those things to me. I have a hard time with that, just because the way I look at this, you guys do, is if you've got the balls to come bring it to me and hand it to me, you've got some pretty good faith into what you've brought. So hopefully we're good. It's kind of one of the things too. I mean, it's so easy to, know, and your actions carry so much weight, more than we give it to. So
Hurt
it's
someone's feelings. Yeah.
no
Yeah. I
could
get-
fucking sway somebody's, man, they might walk away and sit there and talk with you, but they might walk away and go, God damn, I can't believe Eagle wouldn't fucking hit my joint.
But
You know
remember,
what I mean?
but remember, you can always address it up front, Eagle, and say, hey, look, I really appreciate that you brought me something to share. That was a really nice thing of you to do. But I don't really usually accept stuff from people that I don't know, and I hope you don't take offense to that. But if you want, I would take it and I would share it with a friend, and maybe we'll try it after we check it out. But it's just something I don't usually do. But I really appreciate that you brought it to me. You can say
Well,
like that. But I know it's like a complex situation, but I get where you're coming from too. Like you don't want to-
another way, Carlton, would be just like right now. Everybody watching, and you can
Well,
say it during
now
several
they know,
shows. Yeah,
right?
now they know, if you watch the show and you know me, you know that I don't smoke like that or these type of papers. So, it's not necessarily being rude, but you're at least letting people know ahead of time, hey, if you want to smoke with me, I don't smoke using these papers. We can smoke another way, but that's just my
And hey,
preference.
I'm glad to bring it, Jay, and smoke with you. That's fine. I don't want to be contaminated with something that I don't know where it came from. That's all. Like it's
Even
not-
took my chances all through COVID. I took every joint that was passed to me.
Well, see, that's not my concern at all. I'm not worried about that. That's a funny thing.
Even with the defense, they said this stuff helps.
Damn straight.
We did it. I can't believe it. Well, I knew we'd do it, but it was not even a couple bare seconds there where there wasn't some great conversation going on tonight. I appreciate you guys, man. Nailed it again. Nailed her again.
Number 13, huh?
Yeah, number 13. So that's what, at 2 a month? That's fucking, going on 7 months? Is that the right math? Is that right?
It seems longer than that because there's some time we took off in between and moved dates back. And because I remember one time having my puppies on the show and they're fucking almost 11 months old now. And they
Yeah,
were probably 3 months old at the time. So
I feel like we started like maybe August. Does that sound?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Can't believe how too quickly time goes, man. I really don't.
It cruises.
Well, the great conversation, it makes time just go so fast. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours, but most people have other things to do than sit around and listen to people cackle about growing marijuana, like, but we love it. So that's why we're all here. And that's why we have the audience that follows and listens. And a big shout out to everybody in chat.
Cheers.
Just because I'm a man of my word and I do fucking Dad's tent says medically fit. Please unblock me. Message from yesterday. Just passing things along there. Kind of like I'm a little heads up and we're good now. I don't know where that comes from, but I pass the message along, Medi. Do with it as you will. I thought that was funny that they just outright asked yesterday. They even said, please tell Medi to unblock me.
Somebody must have want to say something really bad and want me to see it. But,
I did my job. You don't. Your response is your response.
Everything might be water under the bridge. Who knows? Who knows?
There you go. Well, you guys want to tell everybody, of course, where they can find you and anything you guys have coming up that they may or may not want to check out?
Yeah, let's see. Medically Fit, YouTube, Instagram, both. On Instagram, unlike YouTube, you can see more of the cultivation of the mushrooms and what I've been growing from Sacred 3 mushroom grow kits. My first and second flush of the Jack Frost, holy shit, like take a look. And then what we got coming up, June, Dude Grows Cup coming up that will be out there working the Sacred 3 booth. And a lot of people that come to it, it's like a couple 400 people last year that came to the event. And we were giving out gift bags with little mushroom samples in them. So, we might be doing something similar this year. So if you guys are coming,
For Mr. Tanaze, long-term weed nerd in
Yes,
general,
sir.
but I really admire the great work he's been doing with the mushrooms, and even more so the seriousness to what he's taking it these days, journaling his path, and hopefully, that's something that will pass on and help a lot of great people.
Well, and right now, just the mushroom side of him trying to collect as much data from people as well, taking the kids and growing them and what their experiences are doing it. He's trying to do citizen science-based science. And, when you have somebody like that really cares about what's happening and what it does and trying to help you with every way possible with it, like he's a really awesome dude. And that's why I really back and support what he does. And that's why I try to share with like everybody on Instagram about his grow kits. So,
that's one thing I've never scoffed. I like the way you called it citizen science, pro science. The people that really dig into the passion and go the opposite way of what the norm says. The Tanazis, the Gusses, the fucking us, you guys. There's a lot of people that break stereotypes and fucking do a lot of great things in the name of the citizen science.
well, we don't have degrees like these doctors and we don't have the research facilities to do it, but we're still doing it. We're gathering the information. We're putting together what we can and what we're provided by like me saying, hey, I took this and this is how I felt, this is how long it lasted, this is the amount of doses I took. That's great citizen science right there.
And hey, we're lucky in that way. We're free. We're not bound to being flowing downstream with everybody. We can turn around and swim upstream and not be punished for doing that. We can just go do that. That's tremendous freedom.
And this is something I've said about the citizen science in general is And why it doesn't get documented medically fit is sometimes some things we do in the garden, some of the techniques we utilize are groundbreaking, or could be groundbreaking, but they made so much sense in the natural view of what we're doing. You don't fucking write it down. It's like, wow, I'm doing this. It makes complete sense. Everybody else has got to be doing this. You know what I mean? How can this, you know what I mean? So I think a lot of that gets missed because people just go, I seen through the black and white and I see nature and I can do this, I can manipulate in this way. Why should I write a fucking paper about it? This is something somebody else has had to have figured out by now. But in reality, it may not be. You know what I mean? So I really put a lot of weight into the citizen science, pro science. At least let it sit in here. I'm good for fucking, I'll let anything into this head, to be honest with you. I'll fucking smoke a joint and hear most things out. And at the end, I'll call bullshit or I'll look deeper into it. You know what I mean? But I'll give it a shot. I'll give it a consideration before I just, no. You know what I mean? You can't come into my head. No, la 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 la. That doesn't happen. I'll at least entertain it a little bit. But I don't mean to keep dragging this out. I guess Mr. Smiley, I guess alphabetically you're next, right?
Whatever. I catch me Smiley's Garden on Instagram, smileys.angels on Instagram, smileysangels.net for seeds and shirts and whatnot. So I appreciate everybody that hangs out and chat.
Wait, they're
fun.
shirts? I want a shirt.
Okay.
I want a shirt. I just want to say that. No, I want a shirt. If they're shirts,
We got a shirt.
I want a shirt.
Carefully noted.
For sure. June 7th, right? It's the next event we're gonna be camping at, so I'll have to remember it.
Medium. I can do a large. For medium though. I'm getting this running's really got me skinny. Medium really.
Yeah. All right.
But I would take a large if that's all you got. I do a large too. Just saying. Whatever the stock is. That's where
You're not gonna do a small, so you look all like super ripped and shit.
No,
No.
definitely not. All right, Mr. Carlton.
Hey, the Pharmacy Seeds Network, FARMACY, be that medicine. That's my YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram. I screw around a lot on Instagram with computer stuff, farming stuff, tractors, all kinds of crap. Yeah, stay tuned. Still getting my computer stuff back together. Almost there. Professional studio will be online. Then I'm going to turn on the guns. So.
And that's some of the stuff Smiley don't understand too much.
I'm sorry, Smiley. I'm sorry, dude. I thought you understood.
No, not a second, not a bit of it. But it's all good. I can tell you're passionate about it. It's hot rod.
I'm excited.
I get that part of it.
This is background conversation that we have in our own private chat on Instagram where that comes from. So real quick, Eagle, I did post the Sacred 3 mushroom and fruity spores in chat. So if anybody sees it roll through, they kind of know where to look. I seen some people asking about some spores because they were low on some stuff that there's a couple websites that they can check out.
I believe there's a Code Eagle. If you even go over there from the last interview, I think it saves you like 20% or something like that. So that wasn't purposeful, by the way. That's just left over from our last episode. But as far as I go, you can catch me here most of the time, occasionally on the Run Eagle Run. YouTube smacked down last night's episode, yesterday's episode. I had to fucking cut up a bunch of shit. The beginning's weird, but it's back up now. If you want to go back and watch that, YouTube kind of smacked me down midday and totally blocked the video. So obviously AC/DC did not approve of me just kind of going crazy with their shit last night. So they smacked me down. I had to go back and cut it out.
Hey, that's why Subcool started playing those off bands that were playing the band music. When you go back and watch some of his older videos, he was doing that so he wasn't getting hit.
You know,
Eagle.
I've always went with the I'm never even gonna think about fucking making any money off this, so fuck the monetization. So if I'm like, if I ever make any money off this shit, they can have it. Let's just go. So I've kind of just never paid any mind to it. So, but then it comes back to bite me on, and you know, medically fit as far. I want to real quick one last like. That's what broke up the episodes there. It used to be fucking, and by the way, fucking talking shit with Eagles are coming back. I am booking episodes. But the fucking talking shit with Eagle used to like run until the guest gave up, and then I, without cutting the episode, went right into the wormhole. I had so many I was such an asshole, I never even thought about it. I'd go right into playing music and shit, and then that interview was blocked or fucking taken down because I was an idiot and didn't think about that. So I ended up at that point, because of copyrights, ending that episode and refiring up with the rabbit hole at that point to save the interview from copyrights, bullshit, da 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 da. But that's how that was the origination of the actual separation of the shows, was to protect.
I wondered how you dealt with that with the music. I was wondering how you dealt with that because I was like, man, how does he even get away with like now
Yeah, so the interviews are safe. So anything in the future, they can't be struck down because they don't have no copyright bullshit on it. It's just interviews. Now the wormholes, the weed nerd worlds, every time I throw a song on that,
yeah,
they are in
trouble.
Yeah, so try one of the off bands and not the band to this original song. Because Sub used to do that a lot to play still, playing music in his
Like
videos.
knockoff of it. Yeah, okay.
Yep. See if that works, because somehow his videos are still up playing those songs. Like, I've been watching a lot of Sub's video lately. That's why I'm saying that.
And I can put together some audio tracks for you too. Now that I have the 505 there, I can make some stuff up. So you have some prefab stuff you can run and not run into the copyright issue if you need music for background. That's part of what I'm building here in the studio is that because of exactly that YouTube copyright garbage.
Feel free to send me some links. You guys know some covers to some great tunes. I'm open-minded. I'll check them out. With that being said, I appreciate you guys more than you know, man. Week after week, the knowledge you guys bring to the table is huge. You guys have a good one. Till the next one.